Welcome back to Conversation with Legends. Today's guest is Andy Harris. Now, Andy's a proven CEO, board member, and managing director at STS Capital Partners. Now, Andy has led dozens of mergers and acquisitions. He's guided founders to 8 and 9 figure exits and spent decades on both sides of the deal table, which is pretty cool. He could be the buyer and the seller. He's also the co-author of The Extraordinary Exit, and that's a book you're going to want to pick up. It's a guide for a business owner who wants to sell for maximum value, protect their legacy, and walk away with no regrets. You get it? No regrets. That's the biggest thing, and Andy will probably talk about that. So, Andy, we met years ago, and what always stood out to me is the way you think, and I've talked to you about it before. You're not just, the strategic, you're just the big picture builder. You're like, what? You start with the end in mind, which I love that about you. Then you reverse engineer the outcome to a very clear plan. And that's very rare. Building things around with you. I was like, who did this? And it was always Andy did it. It was funny. And it's exactly what most business owners, I feel, don't do when it comes to their exits. In my industry, in real estate, obviously, only a small percentage of brokers truly build the real end game plan alongside the day-to-day plan. Most people focus on what's the next deal or the next month or the next year. And then one day they look up and realize, it's later, or maybe it's too late. And then they don't have the exit they wanted, or obviously the freedom that they thought, building and working hard, they were working toward. So it ends the wrong way. So today is about changing and challenging these thoughts, right? It's about design and exit that's really on purpose. And one of the setups that we're going to look at is how to be great, and they call it the golden year, right? Make the rest of your life fulfilled and very intentional. So today, if you're a co-founder or a founder or a CEO, entrepreneur, thinking about what is your next chapter, this conversation for you is really for you. Now, I have Andy Harris. Welcome to Conversation with Legends.
Stephen, I'm so glad to be here, and I'm grateful to you. I love your podcast. You do such a great job with these, and I don't consider myself a legend by any means. So
Andy,
not even a legend in my own mind. But anyways, I'm pleased to be here, and hopefully can share some lessons learned, and your listeners will walk away with some golden nuggets.
obviously, and it's funny, Andy, I got to tell you, all the legends I know answered exactly the same way you did. You know, people just, they don't want to give themselves the applause, and which I appreciate about all the legends I've ever talked to. They always want to say, okay, well, this is what I'm going to share. And it's awesome. So I want to actually start, and let's dig into, take us back to the beginning, right? What did young Andy think he'd be doing in his life today?
Well, it's funny. I think my as a boy growing up, and my parents, I had wonderful parents, very loving and nurturing, but they didn't really say this is your path, this is what you're going to do, right?
Right.
And I really didn't necessarily know. I did well in school, I knew that, and so it's funny. In high school, I'm like, all right, now I've got to pick a major in college. What am I going to do? And there was a friend whose son was, much older, and he was a petroleum engineer. And they said, hey, he's a petroleum engineer. He's making a lot of money. Andy, you're good at chemistry and math. Why don't you go into petroleum engineering or chemical engineering? And I'm like, okay. So I just clueless, and I
Yeah.
went into it. I did well in it. But I didn't have a path early, and I didn't really have no guidance from my parents. They just said, kind of, Andy, do what you want to do. So there was really no predestined path, other than
Right.
I relied on some of the things I was good on at that time. Was chemistry and math and sciences, and I was good at that. So I went into to chemical engineering, did well. I enjoyed it. There were engineers around me that ran circles around me. They were much better engineers, but I was good academically, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
And then I started my career with Exxon, which was the number one company in the world. It was Fortune number one, and that was like the holy grail. If you're a chemical engineer and you could get hired by Exxon, it was like you made it, right? And I very quickly learned
Yeah.
in those first 3 years in Exxon that a technical career path was not for me.
Interesting, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So
so, so then let's go into that moment, right? And it obviously it started earlier to think about where you want to go and how you approach leadership and risk. What was that moment today?
yeah, well, that when I changed, and obviously being an engineer, you learn process and systems and structure and all that. Really important, right? It's a great background for me and for any other engineers that start in engineering and then go into business or whatever. But I then learned from there. I pivoted, and I was kind of asked to pivot. In Exxon, I had a lot of responsibility as an engineer for several different facilities. And I had some chemical companies calling on me that were selling us the process chemicals we needed to do what we did. And they said, Andy, you'd make a great salesperson, right? We want you to come work for us. So there were two that recruited me away, and I went with one. And then from then I went into a commercial technical sales and marketing path from there that then ultimately led me into being in my executive leadership and CEO positions, and we can talk about that a little bit later on.
So
But
let's go there.
it was a
Yeah.
big pivot to
So
begin with,
let's
right?
go there because that's huge.
Yeah.
So this is where people don't understand, right? And I'm talking the young people, the older people, everything that they go through. You went and moved the role from technical to leadership, right? So what did that transition teach you about people versus process? Because when
Oh
you're
yeah.
leadership,
Well,
now people's in there.
yeah. It was so originally when I went into technical sales. I was a lone wolf. I'm out selling on my own, right?
Right.
But then I did well enough doing that that I got promoted to being an area leader in Southern California and developed the number one leader for the organization I was working with at the time, and was a leader. But I look back on that, I was a horrible leader, right? I was a command and control, thought I knew it all, thought I could do it all. And I was not a good, I wasn't a good leader by any means. I'm actually embarrassed if I think about some of the ways I did lead, right? It's just embarrassing to think about. But we succeeded as an area. We had a lot of fun as a team. And I thought that was a lot of it about having fun as a team. So I did hit that as the leader. But there were other ways I did in terms of directing people and um, commanding and maybe not empowering and a lot of the other things I learned later on in life. But I did learn how to lead a team, and then went into corporate management from there, and then saw from others how they were leading. I had a very good leader when I was in corporate that I learned a lot from. Um, and then I changed positions a few times in technical sales and marketing. And one of those roles, I had a leader. I was working for a German company, and it was an instrumentation and controls company. And I had a leader that was very, very command and control, dictatorial, literally would slam his hand on the desk, would
That's the
yell and
German.
scream. Well, no, this has nothing to do with, I don't think it had anything to do with German culture. It just, he was German and he was very, but I learned exactly from him how not to lead. I was like, oh my gosh, whatever I do, I'm going to do the exact opposite of what he
Right.
does. Right.
Right.
So I learned that lesson from what not to lead. And then, um, I did a really good job at working in the U.S. for them, for the German international firm, and their headquarters were in Indianapolis. I was building their business in the United States out of Orange County, which is where they had one of their locations. Um, and I got a phone call. They said, "Hey, Andy, we're moving all sales and marketing leadership to Indianapolis."
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
I'm 40 years old, and I've gone through a couple different career paths. They say, "You're moving to Indianapolis." I asked my wife Stephanie, "Hey, we they I'm getting reload to Indianapolis." She's like, "I don't want to go live in Indianapolis." She's a Southern California girl, and she said, "If you're not getting promoted and there's nothing in it, it's just simply a move. Why do you want to do that?" So I took the decision. We're not moving to Indianapolis, right? I'm VP of sales and marketing. They gave me 4 months severance, and that's it. I got 4 months severance. I got two daughters. I think I had $40,000 in the bank. I'm 40 years old. And my career has not ended up where I thought I'd be by this point in time. I mean, I
Right.
had decent roles, but hadn't generated any real wealth, I wanted to always be a president or CEO or business owner, but I hadn't gotten there yet. And so here I am at 40. I'm out of work. I've got a young family, maybe $40,000 in my bank account. And I'm like, I got to get a job fast. I got to find something fast. So
Right.
I'm looking for VP sales and marketing roles. And a couple of friends of mine, which had a really strong network, said, "Hey, our wives we're going on a trip to Italy, um, and we want you to come." And I was like, "You guys don't get it. I'm out of work. I need to find a job. Last thing I can do is have Stephanie and I go to this trip to Italy." And they're like, "No, Andy, you got to come." So we went, and this is just kind of what I'm demonstrating here is the uniqueness of a path or a journey
Right.
that you have no plan of what you have no idea how things are going to end up. So we went on this trip to Italy. And on this trip, one of the other couples that was there, I got to know. And I drove them actually to the airport. They left early. I drove them back. So I had a really deep, good conversation with them. They got to know me and they said, "Andy, when we get back to Cincinnati, is where they were from, I'm going to connect you with some people that I think might have some opportunities for you." So they connected me with um, an investor basically up in Cleveland who had an opportunity in Cincinnati for somebody to come in as VP sales and marketing and then be promoted to CEO. The CEO is going to transition out in a year. So I'm like, wow, I finally see a path to get to where I want to go. I interviewed, and that the culture in that company just didn't fit. And I was like, it's just not a fit. And they offered me the job.
Wow.
And I said, I'm it's not a fit. I'm sorry, I'm turning it down. So here I am still out of work, trying to get a job, right? I turned down a VP sales and marketing to go to CEO role, which was kind of where I wanted to go. And the lead guy on that who had offered me the job said, "Andy, I really like what we saw in you, and I believe you can be a CEO. I'm involved with another business that needs a CEO now." So he's like, "Let me put you in front of the board and interview with that." And I interviewed with that, and they hired me as CEO.
Wow.
So I went, and that's the first time in my life, really, where I had a mentor. He mentored me then from there on.
Nice.
He took me under his wing. He believed in me. And I went from looking for a VP sales and marketing role, unemployed, got 4 months to find a job, to becoming a CEO, to being a CEO, right? And if you'd asked me 4 months later or 6 months earlier, "Are you going to be a CEO in 6 months?" I would have said, "What?" Right? So anyway, it was one of my long-term objectives and goals, but I would have never planned on that, or it's just how my path
And
and
that's the
journey led me
journey,
there. Yeah.
right?
So
That's the journey. And it's funny because people at times block their journey,
yeah.
right? People sometimes get in the way of their journey. And it's funny to see that because some people just go, "I'm not in my comfortable skill set," or, "You know what? I don't know if this is right for me at this point." And there's so many different categories of what's right or wrong. And they forget if other people see them, how do they see them? Because they don't see themselves,
Mm.
right? So they can manifest, they can think, but they are rapidly thinking, where do I take this? And you just took it like, okay, I feel, because, okay, look at, I've talked to you about this before. You know where people lose in the most in their life is not trusting their intuitive self. The ones who trust their intuitive selves are very successful today. They dig into their instincts. They know that no matter risk or gain or loss, they feel right in that intuitive self. You took your intuitive self and said, "Not a fit." And we don't know where that would have gone, but the idea of it is where it did go, and
Yes.
that's where we get to look back. And I really want to get into, because you went into the CEO, right? So when you became a CEO, what did you learn? I would call it the hard way about building the business and actually now sellable, making it
Wow.
sellable.
Yeah, this is a great, great question. And so I'm a first-time CEO, and I when I was CEO for the several different roles, I was CEO for businesses that were backed by private equity.
Okay.
So I'm the CEO of a business that's backed by private equity. And the goal is to grow this business over 3 to 5 to 7 years, do a bunch of acquisitions and sell it and have a terrific exit. So I'm a first-time CEO in 2006. Um, and there were two big lessons learned here. First of all, going into that role, I believed in myself, which is good, but too much. I thought I could do it all, and I'm just going to make this happen, right? And I relied a lot on myself to make it happen. I'm still learning what it's really like to be a leader, right? So
Right.
that's my attitude going in. Still not the best attitude to have as a leader. I go into this, and we've got a business that the private equity firm had acquired. They needed a CEO. They placed me in it. We went out and did some acquisitions. This 2006, 2007. And then it's 2008 and 2009, which is the Great Recession.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Part of the business that we were in, probably 40% of the business we were in, was reinforced fiberglass plastic. So that's bathtubs, that's showers, and marine boats and ski-doos and things like that, right? In
Right.
2008 and 2009, nobody was buying a boat.
Nope.
Housing was going like this. No one was buying showers and bathtubs. So 40% of our business almost went to zero.
Wow.
I'm a first-time CEO. I'm literally shaking. I'm like, I think the business might go bankrupt. This is my first experience as a CEO. I mean, it's just doomsdays in my head. And the leadership team around me, some of them were definitely senior to me, right? They were 10 or 15 years older than me. They said, Andy, don't worry about this. We got this. We've been through cycles before. We're going to get through this. And together as a team, that's when it started clicking. I can't do it myself. I absolutely have to surround myself with good people, and then we'll solve problems as a team. And I learned so much through that. So we came out of that on the back end. We took some strategic initiatives. We came out on the back end of that in 2011 and 2012 so much better and stronger than we did going in. And we sold for a terrific exit, a record exit for the private equity firm that we were with. And I just learned, that's when I really learned the importance of team culture, surrounding yourself with people definitely brighter than you, right? And
Yep.
and
Yep.
then the power of what a strong leadership team, and then for me that then evolved into servant leadership,
Right.
and a lot of
Right.
the key elements of culture that then led me through my next few positions where I now considered myself, I'm a good leader. I'm a good leader, right?
So let's take that, right? So you led the growth and you led the acquisitions. How did those experiences change the way you now you evaluate companies for exit readiness? How did that experience change you and shift you and pivot you?
Yeah. So when you work with private equity, from day one, the day they buy a company, right? Their whole model is we're going to buy it, we're going to professionalize it, we're going to build it, we're going to do some acquisitions, and we're going to sell it. But day one, your focus is on the exit. You're
Right.
building for an exit. So that's the big lesson. And it's a best practice. I advise private business owners all the time, and I'm on two boards of some private companies. They have no plans to exit, but we're building it as though we were, right? And so it was really learning from the private equity playbook, best practices of doing everything you can to professionalize, build, and hit the key value drivers.
So let's
That
go
will,
there though, right?
yeah.
Because there's a bunch of founders right now or CEOs listening right now, right? And they're thinking about, why don't I worry about this now? Why not just worry about the exit later? So what are the unknowingly risk, obviously, right now by not thinking about it?
Well, best practices. It's never too early to start planning for an exit, even if you have no intention of having one. You're going to give it to your
Hmm.
the next generation or whatever. But I think to plan for an exit, because you never know what can happen, right?
Right,
There's
right,
things that can happen to you. There's some things that could happen to the business, plus or minus, that might say, oh my gosh, something so great has happened in the business. If I exited now, it's going to be, fantastic. Or something not so good could happen in the business. You're like, man, I need an exit. I need to bring a partner in.
Right.
So to build out a business in a way that is going to be valuable, right, and more attractive to any type of buyer, whether it be a financial buyer or a quote unquote strategic buyer. But some of the key things that I'd say, that the number one is founder risk.
Okay.
If the business is about the founder and something happened to the founder tomorrow, it's a serious issue.
Hmm.
That's the number one thing that business owners need to design their business around. It's the business operates on a day-to-day basis without them. And I know that may be hard, especially smaller businesses. You don't have all the funds to build out a great leadership team, but the more you can do that, the better, and build that for the long run. The next thing is, as best as you can, stay away from customer concentration. If one customer is your business and something happened to them, or they decided not to do business with you and the business drops 50 or 80%, that's, try to stay away from that. Sometimes it's hard too, because you may have a big customer. Home Depot loves you and they want to expand you across 1,500 stores. Well, now they become 80% of your business, and how are you going to? And there
Yeah.
may be buyers out there that love that and would love to have that exposure. There's other buyers that ultimately would say, no, we don't want that, as an example. And then I think the other big thing you can do to build in some value in your business is, as much as you can have, I'd say recurring business, or
Hmm.
just repetitive business.
Right.
Not a lot of customer churn, not a lot of churn in your business. If you can actually build out a subscription or a repeat or a recurring type business model, that's always really valuable. And then the same thing with your employees, to be able to show to a buyer that, hey, we don't have employee churn, which is a sign of good culture, whatever your
Right.
culture is, right?
Right.
Your employees stick with you. And those are some of the elements that I think that if you can build that into your business as you're looking,
Right. You know,
for your future, for a
and it's
future exit, whether you
interesting
have one or
because
not.
you really marked on, which is probably, I would say, a high percentage of people today is the individual has to be able to be out of the business to make it valuable in the futures. Because, how many companies say I'm selling, but that person's staying.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's the most creative happiness for the guy who wants to sell. He wants to move on to the exit. And I think you're right. I think people concentrate too much on the leader of who founded the business and
Yeah.
forget to now bring in the people like yourself to expose the business in a different fashion and make it part of the sell. So let's get into that. When did you actually realize that you wanted to help these founders create the extraordinary exit? I mean,
Yeah.
not just build companies, yourself, but how did you get the exit?
Yeah. Well, I had led several different firms and buy and build roll-ups, both organic and inorganic acquisition strategy, funded by private equity. And we had some really great exits. And so I definitely learned what it's like to be, and I was doing strategic acquisitions. So I was a buyer. I was going
Right.
out and strategically looking at businesses around the world, acquiring them, integrating them, and then ultimately achieving a really great exit as a result of building something very strong and very attractive. Um,
Hey, we could stop
so,
there a second. Stop.
yeah.
What
Okay.
were you looking for? Because this is huge, right? You're going to acquiring. Now, you just said, I'm acquiring to make a stronger exit, which means I'm acquiring other things that we don't have, that we don't need to go buy to make my exit even powerful and more valuable. What specifics made you look for those things? What are the things you looked for?
Yeah. So we had a strategic thesis, right? We knew what was going to add value. And we were looking, and I'll just use an example in this case. We were looking that we knew if we got bigger with and we were manufacturing, as we got bigger, with scale, uh, our costs went down. Our raw material costs went down.
Right.
So as we got bigger, any acquisition that I made, we were probably buying 5 or 10% better than them. So day one, automatic raw material purchasing synergy, right?
Right.
Then we know, okay, well, we're going to put in some different systems, some different processes. Most smaller companies don't have the systems and processes that a bigger company has at scale. So we pick up some gains there. Then we were looking for footprint. We wanted to have manufacturing facilities in areas of the world or areas of the United States that we didn't. So we'd be closer to our customers, and there was value there. Then there's always the value you get from bringing on maybe some new good employees, right?
Right.
And
Right.
then you integrate the team and you top grade the team, and then we knew in this case, and this is true in general with M&A, when you buy smaller businesses, the valuations or the multiples are lower than when you're at scale, they're higher,
Right.
right?
Right.
So
Right.
we were going to pick up value through raw material synergies. Don't screw the business up. Put in better systems and processes, leverage the really good people and give them more opportunities than they would have otherwise had. And then arbitrage on the multiple. You're buying low and selling higher. And
Right.
so it's actually um it's a well proven and a really good strategy that we had. So we had strategy, and then we had culture. We had really good culture, team culture, really good systems and processes that people that guided us. So we did what we did really well. A servant leadership where myself and our leadership team, the company wasn't there for us, we were there for
Right.
them.
That's
And
interesting.
put good systems, good processes in place, put good people in positions, surround yourself with the brightest people you can, and then just get out of their way, empower them, right? And that was really our model, and it worked very, very well. So as a buyer, that's what I was looking to do, right?
Right.
And making sure that the businesses we bought fit the strategy. We bought some businesses that were had a lot of hair on them and were maybe not the best run and maybe didn't have the best culture. And actually, those turned out to be some of our best acquisitions because we could add so much value.
Right.
And we were a breath of fresh air to that company. And those employees were like, "Oh my gosh, thank God
Yeah.
we're with Andy and his team, or not me, but the business we were with." So, and then when you buy really good, strong businesses, you're going to pay a little bit more for them, right? But maybe you don't get all the value out of them, but they become part of your culture and maybe some of the ways that you're moving forward, and they meet the other boxes that I mentioned. So, as a buyer, I learned how to buy businesses. I definitely learned how to integrate a business, and that's key, right? Getting the acquisition done is one thing, integrating it is another, right? And there's a whole that's a whole nother podcast to talk about that.
Right.
But we
Right.
learned how to do that really well without screwing it up, right? I mean, and that was our number one rule was, Andy, from the private equity, they're like, Andy, whatever you do, don't screw it up.
Right.
Because
Right.
if even if the business we bought flatlined
Right.
after we acquired it, didn't do anything, we picked up so much margin and we were going to get arbitrage on the multiple. We would, it was a slam dunk for us. So that was another. And so we didn't really mess with businesses too much after we acquired them in the first year or so.
Yeah.
We just kind of had to learn and settle and understand who was who. And we didn't go in thinking we had it solved and we knew exactly what to do with the business, because we may have known the industry and may have known how to operate businesses like this in general. But I think a big thing as an acquirer is to go in and start fixing things that aren't broken, right?
Right.
It can kind of mess up the integration. So anyways, getting back to your question earlier about, I learned how to buy businesses. I definitely learned how to prepare them for exit and sell businesses. So I've been on the buy side and the sell side as an operating CEO. I've learned how to, importance of and how to lead and run a business on a day-to-day basis. So then in 2000, and I thought that's what I was going to do the rest of my career. I thought I'd do 3 or 4 more of these until
Right.
a company no longer wants to have me leading their businesses. Each one, let's say, is on average 5 years, the buy
Right.
and builds. So I thought that's what I was going to keep doing. I love being a CEO. I love the impact you make as the leader, the difference you make in your employees' lives, the community that you're in. And I loved it. I was having fun doing it largely. And then I met the founder of our firm, STS Capital, which is selling its success to significance
Right.
through selling to strategics, STS. Rob follows, and he's a wonderful man. I met him in 2018. I'm in YPO. He's in YPO. We were connected to some fellow people, and he's probably one of the most connected people in all of YPO. And he said, in YPO fashion, he said, Andy, what are you going to do in the second half of your life? I said, well, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And he said, I've got a better challenge for you, something that's more purposeful. And he said, you have learned how to buy and sell businesses. You're a good coach. You're a good mentor. What if you could help 3 to 5 businesses, privately held, founder-led, private, businesses a year, achieve a much better exit than they otherwise would have known? And I thought, man, that is really purposeful. And I drew back on my experience when I was doing acquisitions. The founders I was buying businesses from, I'll use an example. We were buying at 5 to 7 times EBITDA. We knew we were going to sell it 10 to 12 times EBITDA.
Right.
Had they pushed me and said, Andy, you know what? Or had an advisor working with them saying, you know what? We really want to join you, but it's going to be 8 times or 9 times EBITDA, right? That's a 30 to 50% increase maybe in terms of their valuation. Our model would have paid for it.
Right.
We would have done that. We would have done it. I would have bought them at 8 or 9 because we knew we were still going to make money, right? So the point here is that I know there's a lot of founders out there that think they can do a deal on their own, or they get an advisor that's just getting it done at market. And we push for what's the strategic value. And usually strategic value is 30%, 50%, 100%, 200% more than typical industry multiples. And that's what we push for and we work for and get these strategic combinations to happen. And because of my prior operating experience and being on both the buy side and sell side, it's really purposeful. And I'm not only helping my client, I'm helping these strategics find a strategic buyer where there's a strategic fit, find that fit and identify that fit. And yeah, we ask them to pay for it and they have to, but they don't walk away thinking like, wow, we just got, we got taken advantage of. They didn't get taken advantage of. They paid for the strategic fit that makes a lot of difference for both companies, and both companies are transformed as a result of the combination. So that's why I took that path to do that. It was purposeful. And it's a way of giving back to help these private business owners and founders who've worked hard for 20 or 30 years, or maybe it's only 10 years, whatever, to grow the business. And that's what they know how to do. Yeah. But if they've never sold a business before, or even if they've sold one before, there's so many nuances in selling a business and getting it really prepared. And where are the areas we can really add value? And then identifying the great strategic fits for the business that are going to preserve your legacy, take good care of your people, be a good home for the business, meet what other personal outcomes you have, and pay maximum valuation for it. That's what I love doing, and it's it's being an
so let's move off. Let's move off that
deal. Yeah,
let's move off that for now. Let's go somewhere else because you've been on the both buy side and the sell side. You've been really great at advisory. You get this opportunity to create purpose in the outcomes of what you're looking for everybody, right? But you go into, and we call it the extraordinary exit, right? And most founders aren't really understanding, one, when does that start? Because they always go at the end, not the beginning. They're at the end going, all right, who wants to buy me, right? And unfortunately, most of them are burnt out. And the value of burnout is very lower than the value of I'm ready when it's the right deal, right? Yeah. And then there's families. And let me talk about that. There's families who are inheritance in part of a family business that sit there with a founder who doesn't want to move away, and then he's gone. And then they have to recreate a sell that's unfortunately, maybe it's a good purchase for somebody, but it's unfortunately not the exit that the founder was really looking for when he was working through those days. So I'm going to get into this part. How does the path start? What's a great exit? When does it start? Months, years, or decades? Where does it start? when they should start planning this. And I want it just to be where,
Yeah.
people don't know this part.
Yeah, I mean, ideally when you start your business or you acquire a business, it should start then, and you should be thinking about it, right? Even if you know it's not even in on the radar, it's tens of years away. At least be thinking that I got to build a business that's going to be valuable, and get involved with an advisor, a consultant, someone that can say, for the type of business you're in, these are the big things that you're going to want to do as you build the business, right? So, and that's to me is just strategy and working your blueprint, and your roadmap for building your business. But it's with an exit in mind, whether or not you ever even plan on doing that. But ideally, if you now you're like, I'm really starting to seriously consider an exit. I think it's years, a couple years away. Ideally, if you could give yourself maybe 3 years ahead of time to really do what you need to do in those final 3 years, because you can get a lot done in a couple years. I get clients that come to me that say, I want to sell, Andy, I need to sell in 26. Well, if you're coming to me right now saying you want to get a transaction done right now this year, we might be able to get it done, right? But if there's some things that could be improved in the business, and the buyer and the seller just doesn't want to do them, then they're going to probably take a bit of a drop in valuation as a result of that, versus taking time to put a couple things in place. Maybe they need to add to their leadership team. Maybe there's some systems and processes they're missing. Just whatever. There's something they could do with technology. Maybe there's something that's happening in their supply chain. Just some things that you need to kind of work out and be a little bit more patient. So I'd say at least a couple years in advance if you're really at least seriously considering it. And I love to get involved a few years in advance, because that's when we can really do our analysis and say, wow, if you do this, this, and this, these are big value drivers. It's going to,
Definitely.
your business, if we took it to market today, is here. But if you could do these things, I think you get 50% more in 2 years.
See, that's what I'm talking about, though. See, that's where I'm saying is most people, I think, honestly, by talking to you in the past and listening to you now, I would say 5 years before you want to exit is a creating of advisory. It's advisory time, right? You have to step away and say, you said this a lot, so I'm just going to bring it back to what you said. This is when you got to start actually looking for leadership and understand that if you get your ego out of the way and everything out of the way, but you build outside leadership into your business that creates value and other opportunities in your business that you don't see. And this is where you come along, obviously, in these companies and go, look, we didn't have all these industries into my business. We brought them into the business. We bought them well. We gave them, look at our whole meaning of our teams got better. They actually were really involved, and there was all these different systems. Look at all these different companies who did the certain plans for their companies. Like a lot of these people, said, okay, I want to give my company a percentage of the business and let them be a part of the business because they will help me grow it and make it feel right and do right because they get a percentage of that. So there's so many different things I always looked at, like, why don't companies do this? Or why don't companies do this? Because I'm thinking so far out, not in, that I think if you have a team is better than just one, right? But then you come along and you see, different paths and decisions are made from these founders, right? So let's talk about what are the three biggest ones that are made that either compound value, or let's really talk about, because this is where it really comes, where they quietly destroy it.
Well, I mean, I think, strategy, just first of all, figuring out strategy, right? Where are we going to play? How are we going to win? And why are we going to win, right? And does that make sense? First of all, just understanding that for the business. Then I think the other thing we touched on already is founder risk. How does the founder take themselves out of that and put a team in place to help make that happen, right?
Right.
And that's a path. And there's a lot of founders that love the business so much, they love their customers so much, they're so passionate about it, but it's really hard for them to kind of let go of some things. And it'll actually longer term, I think makes such a big difference in their lives when they look,
Right.
down the road. They're like, wow, I don't have to. I put a great leadership team in place. I'm enjoying my life. Things are running. I'm still at the helm, but I've got a team that's doing it, and they're
Right.
and they're
Right.
executing really, really well. And even if it's going to go to the next generation or whatever, what a great lesson that shows them as well. And and then or if it's now, oh, you know what, we do want to exit. And then the other thing I want to highlight here is, what if there's things that are out of your control, right? Death,
Right.
sickness, maybe there's a divorce, or who knows what it is. These are things that a buyer, if the business isn't already well designed and set up for an exit, a buyer can take advantage of those. Big advantage, and you're not going to create the value that the value won't be there that could have been there. So I
Yeah.
think, nobody likes to think that way, but that's another reason for designing a business that's prepared for an exit. Should something something really
Okay. So let's
causes
shift
that
that
where it
though.
has to happen.
Let's shift to the seller. Okay, let's shift to the seller because we know the buyer. The buyer is going to look for there's two different kind of buyers. There's a strategic buyer and there's a financial buyer, right? In this. And sometimes I think the founders look more for a financial buyer, not a strategic buyer,
Yeah.
which cuts them short, correct?
Well, yeah. So really quickly, the difference between a financial buyer and financial buyer, for lack, that's private equity. And let's say they're coming in and they're buying the business the way I did before. They want to try to buy low and sell high.
Right.
That's part of their model, and they finance it. So they're financing the acquisition. They're using leverage, um, and then so there's nothing wrong with that. And they will tout, and this is usually part of their model, there's a second bite of the apple, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll give you X now. If you'll keep 20% in, when we sell in 5 years, we're going to turn that 20%. We're going to give it a 2 or 3 or 4 exit, right? So
Right.
that second bite of the apple, now you get you've got all this. You got the first bite and the second bite. What I've learned and seen, if you find the right strategic buyer, you can get the first and second bite of the apple now. You don't have to wait 5 years and the
Exactly.
risk of what could happen in those 5 years to get it.
Exactly.
You can get that value now. That's our experience and what we've seen. But it takes a lot of work to find that right strategic buyer. And also, there's also a misconception. A lot of people think, well, the strategic buyer is my competitor. And when they buy my business, they're going to shut it down. They're going to lay my people off. They're going to do, a lot of bad things to the business that I don't want to see happen. And my legacy is out the window. That can happen. Most of the clients I work with put those types of buyers on the do not call list. We are not selling to them. We won't sell to them. Don't even reach out to them.
Right.
So we find strategic, and any good advisor will find buyers that are in adjacencies where,
Right.
wow, if we could combine our business with yours, we have access to your customers, you have access to our customers, both businesses get transformed because we have complementary services or products, and we can cross sell.
Right.
Wow, that could be a holy grail. And now it's 1 + 1 = 4 or 5. And it's obvious that they desperately need your facilities and your leadership team and what you do, because you're doing something that they don't do, and they're doing something that your business doesn't do. But put together, they can both
Right.
be more. They can both be more together. Or maybe it is the same type of business, but it's regional expansion. Right? They're on the east, you're on the west. There's no way they're going to shut your business down because they're buying you because they need your location, they need your people there. So finding those types of fits are the keys here. And once again, I do believe that in many cases, a strategic buyer, you can get the first and second bite of the apple now, 30, 50, 100, 200% premium versus the first bite of the apple.
Totally
That being said,
yeah.
Private equity, which when I was doing that, we were a strategic buyer. So private equity buys strategically. And
Right.
if they already have a platform and they want your business to come on and be part of it,
Yep.
you can get a strategic value from them. They will be willing to pay.
Happens every day.
Value. And also then get the second bite of the apple out of it too, right? So sometimes now that first and second bite of the apple you can kind of get now, but then you also get maybe a third bite of the apple, if you will, if you find the right play with a hybrid, a strategic that's backed by private equity. They can be great people, great businesses to sell to. And then the final consideration, if you're thinking about your legacy and all that, when you sell to a business that is backed by private equity or sell to private equity, they're going to sell in 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And you don't know who that sale is going to be to, right? That's totally out of your control.
You don't, but at that point, you're moved off, right? Yeah. And the thought I have to say, and I want to kind of shift this completely to the emotional side. You're very good on the technical side, and you had to deal with the emotional side. You had to have. And you're saying something earlier, and it caught me real quick. Great founders want to protect legacy, right? And you said that. And I think let's switch this to that conversation, because you had to have conversations that help these founders see things differently on this outcome. So let's go to the first one. What do they underestimate emotionally about selling their business?
Oh, just the emotional roller coaster that it's going to be. I mean, people just think, oh, I'm going to get an offer. We're going to go through due diligence. It's going to be done. It's an emotional roller coaster. And that due diligence is excruciating, and it's fatiguing. And they're going to ask questions that some founders take personally and take as an insult. Oh, why are they asking me this, right? And they should know better. And it's like, hey, they're just doing due diligence. This is just standard part of the, so that's part of it. But I think really how what an emotional roller coaster it can be. And then maybe even as they get close to closing, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm selling my baby, right? And that can be tough. But the way to help founders get through that, and I think the best founders that go through these processes, gets back to their why and their purpose, right? What was their why and purpose for their business, and what's their why and purpose for selling? And when they get comfortable with what that why and the purpose of why sell the business, and it's documented, and they're aligned with their spouse or their family or shareholders, now that's really a really great foundation to come from. And then there's another exercise that I like working with sellers on, and it's called the owner's outcome exercise. Not only do you have your why and your purpose, but what must you have when this transaction closes? What must you have? What's the required outcomes?
Identifying.
And then what are the nice to haves? What would be nice to have? What would be preferred? But if you don't get it, it's not the end of the world. But man, if you got that, that's the icing on the cake too. Right. And when you're aligned with the why, the purpose, what you must have, and then what you'd like to have. When we get through a transaction, we go back and we kind of do a look back on it, and we're like, wow, guess what? We achieved your why, your purpose is being achieved. Maybe it's to go out and do a lot of philanthropy, or just completely exit the business, or do something that's good for your family, and you want to set the family and employees up for a good home for the next stage.
Well, let's go there though.
That was
You're going right into there. You're going straight into there. And the thing I want to say is the first thing you said, I want to ask how they do it, right? How do you help them detach from their identity from the company before the exit? How do you help them? Because they have to detach from it now.
Well, and it gets back to that, getting really settled and comfortable with this why, the why or the purpose of why are you going to committing to a sell side process, and your outcomes. And everybody's outcomes are different, but I've had founders where their outcomes were the last thing they were going to do is leave the business. They just they needed a partner to help take the business to the next level. Right. So we got to find a buyer that desperately needs them. And it's a no-brainer that they're not going to let them go. Right. I have and the Extraordinary Exit, the book that we published, Jonathan, one of his required outcomes is he had to leave the business. He had a daughter with special needs, autism, and he wanted to focus on her. So we had to find a buyer that was comfortable with him not being in the business and leaving in short order.
Right.
So, everybody's situation is different. But once you align and really document, that's why, the purpose, what are the outcomes you want to achieve, and then when they're achieved, you get it. Now, I had a founder, or a family business we sold 2 years ago. It was being run by second generation. He desperately wanted to stay in and keep running it. He was a very good CEO. His dad was chairman, and his dad had built this business, and this was definitely his baby and his business. And he and his wife had kind of done it together, and we were very close to closing. And the father started retrading the deal. The seller started retrading. He said, "You know what? They need to pay me more. They need to pay me more. They need to do this. They need to do that." And the son was like, "Oh my gosh, it's." And when we sat down to begin with his family and with the father and the wife, they said the reason we're doing this is because we want to go into our golden years. We want to do philanthropy. We want to do all these great things, and we think it's a great transition for our son. That's when we started, that was their purpose and their why, and
Right.
and we had their other outcomes. When the deal was ready to close and the dad started backtracking,
Hmm.
it was a Sunday afternoon. I had to have a call with he and his wife. And I said, "Listen, let's go back and look at why you wanted to do this. All your outcomes, check, 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 check. We've checked them all. Your son's getting a great opportunity to move forward, and you guys are going to do what you said you wanted to do." And then his wife said, she was on the call, and she said, she spoke to her husband, and she said, "We decided to sell the business and move into our golden years."
Right.
And all
Right.
of a sudden, it cleared everything up for him. All the confusion he had and the emotions and everything just cleared up. And you could see it. All of a sudden, there was relief in his face. He said, "You know what? I am doing what I said I wanted to do." And
Yeah.
I took this decision with my wife, and we closed like 2 weeks later. But
But that's the story of, they get to, it's not just about, you know, the bank account change. It's about their theory of who they are and their why and their outcome. And there's a path and journey that's going to make a difference for them. And what does that mean to you personally when you deal with that? Because you're seeing these people, and this is I mean, you must have feelings in this situation because you're dealing with them not just a week of doing something with them or a month. You're dealing with years in this journey with them, and you've been their lead advisor through this process, helping them understand certain things and taking them through, even families and employees and communities. You're involved in that, and it's not about a bank account. So what do you do to take place in that to get them prepared?
well, still, once again, we had a level set at the beginning, so we were all on the same page. We knew why we were doing this, where we were going,
Right.
and then at the end, it had to go back and say, really remind. But there is a little bit of just being a coach and a mentor, and a little bit of a therapist, if you will,
Yeah, of
right, to
course.
help people guide through this process, and also keeping buyers and sellers. There's times in a process where there's some conflict. There's some really tough terms to negotiate, and keeping those even keeled and not letting them blow up, and one key term blowing a whole deal up when there
Right.
is a way to get around it,
Right.
and helping both sides manage their emotions. But it really is just being an even keeled um, coach, and having our founders or our business owners trust the process. We're
Right.
going to get there. Trust me as an advisor, or whoever the advisor is. Trust your advisor, and and they have to trust each other. But it really is. It just gets back to being settled and
Right.
comfortable with it's
Right.
the right decision to serve the purpose and the why, and we're
Right.
achieving that and fulfilling that. And it gets back also, I think, strongly into this whole success to significance. All our
Yeah.
clients are successful, but we're bringing success, and they're significant already in many cases, to greater significance,
Yeah.
right? And that's really what most founders or business owners want to achieve. They want to take the success they've had and turn it
Yeah.
into significance, and however you define that significance.
Yeah. But so you're a co-author and you wrote a book and obviously extraordinary exits and the possibility. And you're dealing with all these different ideas, right? And people have to read and understand and listen to you. Obviously it's on audio, so it's cool too. A lot of people are always listening. But my question is life after the exit, right? So what do founders get wrong about life, after that wire comes in, they get their money, and you're still there, right?
Yeah,
What did they get wrong?
man, you're just asking such great questions. So we talked about this owner's outcome. What must they have, and might be preferred to have. We have this. It's actually an exercise we put our clients through. It's very thought provoking, and part of that isn't just what do you want to get out of the transaction. Then it's like, draw your painted picture. What does life look like after the exit? What does it look like?
Right.
What do you want to achieve? And a lot of people are like, wow, I never thought of it that way. I just thought I was going to sell my business for $200 million. I got $200 million in my bank account. All right. Well, what does life look like when you have $200 million in your bank account?
Yeah.
So that's part of this process too.
Right.
And it's written, it's documented, and it also just brings so much clarity and helps settle that out. And they're walking that through with their spouse or their partner or their family. And that's that to significance, right? Or greater significance. Right. What's that significance mean post exit? And
Right.
have a plan for that. Have a thought of that, not just simply, I don't have to deal with my business anymore and I have $200 million in my bank account. Well,
and it's funny, people think, well, that could be the problem. I don't mind, right? But they don't understand the person who has been in that business for 50, 40, 35 years and built this from nothing, that this was their life, right? Yeah. And like you just said, you have to help them start preparing for the next chapter before the exit ever happens. Yep. So you give them some kind of thought process, because again, that could be seller's remorse, because hold on a sec.
Yeah.
When we're married and we're going through our lives and we have our kids in our household, we're doing all that stuff, and we never prepare ourselves though when kids go to college and you're like, we're empty house. And then my wife and I were looked at each other like, oh, this is really good. We were first like, what are we going to do? We don't have to take care of these guys anymore. And they're out, and we still have to take care of them, but we don't have to, they're not living in our hip space. And it's funny because no one prepares you, but in your mind, all of a sudden we thought, oh, wait, no one's to tell us what to do, or if we don't have a worry about this, or we don't have to worry about that. And all of a sudden life became like dating again. Like, oh, this is really cool. And I don't know if the actual owner or the founders understand that it's a new day for them and how to really move across to achieve the extraordinary exit, which I think that extraordinary exit is the golden year,
Yeah, well, the way I define an extraordinary exit is we got you maximum valuation and we achieved your personal outcomes, what you had to get out of it. And when we get both of those, it's the holy grail. But and I think whether someone sells their business for 20 million or 50 million or 200 million or more, right? Mm-hmm. Actually, probably if you have 20 million or 30 million after exit, maybe you have a plan for what you're going to do with that. If you've got 200 million, that's a whole nother problem. I mean, what are you going to do with $200 million, right? So, and you have to think it through, right? So, anyway, I think all the founders that I developed, we develop deep relationships with when you go through this process.
You have to,
and I want to make sure that you don't want them to have seller's remorse, right? There may be some, but not excessive, right? Because you did find a good home for the business. You preserved their legacy. You helped them achieve what they wanted to get out of this so they could go on to what this significance is in the next stage of their life. And then if you've done that, everybody can kind of look themselves in the eye, in the mirror, and say, you know what? We did a good job and we did what we set out to achieve here. And maybe the seller misses his business or her business, they miss it. They still have the relationships with the employees, some of them, I'm sure, but they've put a good plan in place for their next stage of their life, the golden years, or
Right.
if they're younger, for the next business they're going to grow and build,
Right.
right?
Right.
So they're going to put that to significance, whatever that significance means.
There is so much, and unfortunately, an hour is our time. But
Yeah.
there's so much you have given. There's so much information. You talk about the avoidance of how to do things. You talk about how to achieve extraordinary exits, and you talk about how the founders themselves ask themselves every day. And what the best part is, everybody can connect to you, and everybody. I'm going to give everybody the way to connect to you because there's way more than just this, right? And Andy, I want to say first of all, thank you for bringing what I call real talk today. And you don't fluff it. You just got a bunch of wisdom from someone who actually, has been in the arena, like on both sides of the table, which we talked about, buyer and seller. And what an opportunity for people. But I would say for everyone listening, here's one takeaway I take, right? If you're building a business without thinking about how you'll eventually exit, you're leaving your future to chance. And this is what I think people don't see. I don't want to see people wait too long because I think they're missing the best part of what they can do to build to the 200 million. Great exits to me aren't really accidental, right? They're more intentional. And this is what you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about.
Absolutely.
They're built through clarity, which you bring up all the time. Their preparation and the right advisors like you, right? And the discipline to take this beyond, today's deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I want to say, so whatever stage the audience of people listening to this are in, 1 year in or 30 years in, start building your end game now. Andy has a lot of knowledge, and I love what I've always listened to Andy and give me great advice and great theories. But Andy, I want to tell you, first of all, I appreciate you. And I want to thank you for being part of the conversation with legends. And you know what? I know you're going to say, I'm not a legend, but to me and most people of what you've done, you're amazing in your life and you're a legend to a lot of people. And you've helped many people get to the golden years. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I was honored when you reached out to me. And regarding the book, The Extraordinary Exit, I wanted, it's not a how-to guide. It
Yeah.
truly is a story of the journey that Jonathan took, and it's told from his perspective, and then it's told from mine as the advisor on
Awesome.
the deal. And there's a lot of golden nuggets in there about what to do and maybe what not to do. And there's a lot of other lessons that we wove in from other deals. And I've had several people who've read the book reach out to me and say, Andy, I sold my business 5 years ago, and I wish I had read your book before I sold my business. So it's a unique way of helping people
Yeah.
learn best practices and avoid what not to do
Yeah.
in a story format. So I think it's a pretty easy read. And I think hopefully Jonathan and my goal was just if people can sell their businesses better because of our book,
Yeah.
great. That was our objective. That was our objective.
I'd love to do another one with you and Jonathan one time. It would be a lot of fun
Okay.
because I'd love to hear both sides of that journey and
Yeah,
just
we'd love
like
to.
a real talk, both sides. Nothing about technical, just how you took it place to place to place and how the relationship started and how it finished. I think a lot of people don't know how important it is to have the best people around you.
Mm.
And you know what? The most successful people have had amazing people who have been around them, mentored them, and also advised them through the process. So again, thank you again. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Okay.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks, everyone.